You never know who you're going to meet in that 15 minutes. Most executives arrive early because they want to be prepared.
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, a podcast that empowers everyday women like you, like me, to share and learn from life's mentor moments. I am your host, Rani Alfers, and in each episode, you will meet inspiring women that understand the power of recognizing mentor moments and how those moments can change it all. These fabulous women are here and ready to share it all with you. So let's dive in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Working Women Mentor. Today's episode is all about joy. Lori Pine is the Joy CEO. This lady is incredible. With over 25 years in a corporate environment as vice president, as a representative of all the global brands out there that come to mind, you can't imagine the stress and the work that she went through. And then one day, something changed, and she changed because of that. She hit burnout. And if you're listening, I know that we've all been in these moments that we just can't do anymore. She brings an insight, she brings candor, she brings mentor moments that she can share with us today. One thing I really enjoyed about our conversation is that she is both soothing and exciting. You just want more of Lori. And joy is something that will leave you and exude through our conversation and this episode. She is setting out to help other executive women out there, help other women. But today she's here with us, and that's all that matters. Let's join in and meet Lori. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Working Women Mentor. Today's guest is Lori Pine, the CEO of Joy. Yay. Welcome, Lori. How are you today?
I am so good. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you. And thanks for the invite.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, please introduce yourself to the audience. For those of you out there who haven't met Lori yet, you're about to have a lot of fun with her.
Yes, I can't wait to dig in. My name is Lori Pine. I am the Joy CEO, and I'm a 25-year corporate veteran turned executive life coach for women who are busy and doing all of the things required to maintain a professional life and a personal life and find themselves tired and burnt out and wondering, what the heck am I doing?
Oh, I'm sure there's no one out there like that. Yeah, right. Everyone listening is like, oh, that's been me like last week or this morning. Those feelings that we all run into. So I love this new career path of yours. And a really huge congratulations to you because as of recently, you've completed the build out of a lot of your programs and you've been helping women already. You've been helping those around you. So congratulations on this fresh branding image that you've put out for your company.
Thank you so much. Yes, very exciting. You don't realize how much work goes into all of that digital footprint, but it's been really exciting to actually be out there.
And I know the people listening, I mean, we all have a social media complex. We either too much, too little, not sure what to do, how to promote our businesses. And we were talking before the recording, and it's like you've really relied on some specialists to help you kick this off. How has that experience been for you working with a team like that and really putting your foot out there in that social world that you probably didn't do when you were in your corporate culture?
That's exactly correct. In a corporate world, there's a built-in team of people to support you, and collaboration is just part of the culture. But when you make a move to go out on your own, you have to build that system for yourself. And my whole life, I've been a team player. I played team sports all the way through college. And so I am most comfortable when I'm in a team environment, and made a decision early on that in this entrepreneurial venture that there are things that I know, but there are many things that I don't know. And it would be a waste of my time to think that I could become an expert in all of these hats that are required. And I wanted to ramp up really quickly. So I did. I invested in some key places that I thought could really unlock my business quickly and help me get to the next level in a really meaningful way. And while doing that, I made great friends in these business partners, and they help promote my business. And it really goes to the saying that when the tide rises, all the ships rise. And now we're sharing ideas and we're referring to one another. And it really is very helpful.
It's helpful, and I'll say just from personal experience, I always find that I learned something as well about myself and my own business or my own practices when I'm going through those exercises. And because they ask you so many questions, and it's like, how do you want this to look and feel? And sometimes I'm just like, I don't know exactly yet. They keep asking the right questions will lead you to that right path, as we know. But they can be a little uncomfortable sometimes, but it's such a growth experience. Yeah, just putting yourself out there and trying to polish up the branding and taking what you've created and letting other people see it shine.
That's exactly how the title, The Joy CEO, was born. I was in corporate, I left, I did this certification for executive coaching and leadership and organizational performance. And I was really contemplating, who am I going to coach? What is the pain point that I have this expertise to coach on? And as I was contemplating that person, that woman, that moment that she's like at a breaking point, there were several different problems that she could have just based on my own personal life experience. Could be divorce, it could be loss, it could be teenage child who's struggling. It could have been lots of things. And as I thought about that, I thought, yikes, that feels really heavy to think about working in that problem day in and day out. And I really flipped the script on myself and said, what's the solution? Who do I want to be in the solution for these women? And it's what's on the other side of the problem. And that's how my own life has unfolded, is the joy. Those pain points and those difficult times in life that felt more than a season. They felt like an eternity, like they're never going to end. This thunderstorm, this tornado is never going to end. Actually was just a season. It was just a moment in time that did end. And on the other side of it, there was growth and there was experience and there was connectivity. And I could then share that with other people and give back. And there was so much joy in that.
I'm so glad you brought up joy and the title, the CEO of joy, because it just tells people, it tells me that you know what you're doing when it comes to joy and you mean it, you feel it, you've changed your whole life to actually help people, but also feel it yourself. So, okay, take us back to that time in corporate and then how you even maybe envisioned your life and where this joy piece came from.
Yeah. So, I think I went through life feeling somewhat victimized, like as though I didn't have the power over my own life, that I was much more subjected to circumstances. I worked for big companies, Anheuser-Busch, the Coca-Cola company, Campbell Soup Company, and my life was predicated on decisions that were made in the C-suite. And for many years, every 2 years, it was a big corporate reorg. Hundreds, if not thousands of people were laid off. Our team was restructured. One time, my entire team was let go. They just decided that that team's no longer needed. That work is no longer
Who does all the
required.
work, Lori? I mean, I'm sure they wanted 10 more people to help you, right?
Right. And so, the good news is that you might get to keep your job. But then the bad news is, who does all that work? Like, where does all that work go? So, yes, you might be left in a box, quote unquote, on an org chart, but then you wake up the next day and you're like, how do I manage this new workload? How do I manage all these new people and the expectations upon me? And I think that that's very real for right now, probably with many of your listeners, because we are in a season where every day there's a new headline about some company is going through a reorg and people are losing jobs. And it's one thing for the people who actually get displaced. And I know
That's
that
right.
creates a tremendous amount of fear. And they're like, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? What's the next job? And how will I provide? It's equally as painful for those who are left behind because there's an emotional attachment to their friends, their colleagues
And
who are
we don't
leaving.
talk much about the people that are left behind. Our hearts are usually for the folks, like you said, who are looking for a new role, who've recently been let go. No one ever talks about the people who are still at the company doing all the work.
Yes. And it's a very real, I don't know if it has any sort of syndrome sort of title, but there is a very real element to it that says, here I am. Some of my dearest friends have just been displaced. I have an emotional attachment to that. But now I have this overwhelm of how do I actually get the work done? and have some semblance of balance to my life. And honestly, every time that that happens, there's at least a 3-month ramp up where there is no balance. It's head down, grind, hustle, all of those words.
You're
And
chasing the balance. Then your distant vision, I'll get there one day if I could just do 2 more late nights or 2 more weekends of work, it'll be better.
exactly right. And in the meanwhile, you're looking in the rearview mirror and like, oh, I do have children. Oh, I do have a partner. Oh, I do have a family that loves me and people that want to spend time with me. And you're just trying to catch up and catch your breath. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such an interesting transition from you being in that scenario in the corporate world. And then, like you said, wanting to feel differently, wanting to get out of that season. What made you take that next step? Because it was a really big one. I'm sure salary, from the benefits, from the culture, from the people you've been working with for a long time.
Yeah, it was a really big move and one that, quite frankly, wasn't all that premeditated and planned. I had thought from young in my career that I was looking to be a VP and get to the C suite, and those were my aspirations. And I loved leading people, I love mentoring people. And there were times in those years where my career had to pause. I became a mother, and during those times, you're not climbing the ladder. You're just maybe at a lattice status. And so what happened was I had made it to VP. I managed a team that was really phenomenal, high performing, and we were doing some incredible things in the business. And then the pandemic hit. And the business that I was in provided food products to grocery stores, and all hell broke loose, so to speak. So the work that was already a heavy workload just began to look different. Instead of being on a plane every week, traveling to see customers and my team, I was now in this house, in this office, day in and day out, and trying to manage supply chain issues and delivery issues. And meanwhile, I had young team members who had young children, no daycare, no parents to help. So they're working through the night, taking care of their children through the day, not sleeping, and, a real humanitarian issue. And all the while, my own children were in high school. My oldest was a senior graduating from high school in 2020. And my youngest was a sophomore. And we had just moved him from a very large public high school to a very small private school. And as the pandemic continued, my youngest, was really struggling, as many teenagers and humans struggled during the
Struggled in
pandemic.
their own way. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was struggling right here under my very eyes, my nose, and I saw it, but I couldn't see the extent of it because I was so buried under the work. And my oldest graduated from high school, went away to college that fall, and he came home over Thanksgiving. And the way they had structured the school year, when he came home for Thanksgiving, he stayed home until after New Year's. And one day he walked by my office and he said, "Mom, what are you doing? We saw you more when you traveled every week, and you're right here in the house with us."
I know that
And
didn't feel good.
oh god, it was one of those moments of just daggers to the heart, like, just such a truth serum that I had to stop and do a self-assessment, like, wow. And so I really paused, and for
Did
the
you
next
find yourself a bit angry at first? Almost sort of like, "Hey, I'm doing this to contribute to the household for everyone. Like, I'm not just in here having fun."
I think I
Did
was defensive.
Yeah.
Like I have to do this. This is required of me. We're having a crisis at work. And then as I started to think about the crisis at work, like, well, how big of a crisis is that? How important is this work crisis in the big picture of my entire life?
That's a great way to step back and think about it because it starts to probably shape the direction you need it to go.
I needed some perspective. And I think perspective is so key for all of us because when we're in it, buried, there's no place for perspective. And perspective changes everything. So there's very few people in my life who could have said what my son said, the way he said it, in the tone he said it, and had me stop in my tracks. But he has that gift for me. And we all have people in our life that are that person and can really stop us in our tracks. And so for the next few weeks, we were leading into the holidays. And so it did give me some space to assess like what is really happening. And lo and behold, my youngest son was really struggling. I started to
Mhm.
get into the portal and his grades, and he had like a 1.5 GPA. He's not turning in assignments. He's really
And this was at
struggling
his new school that he was going
at
to,
his
Lori? So
new
this is
school.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's struggling with Zoom. I'm going to check on him. He's like playing video games while the Zoom's going on, and he's got his camera hidden. And I'm like, oh dear God, we've got a situation here. And so over the Christmas break, I started having conversations with my husband that just said, I think something might have to give here. And all the while, as much as I loved many aspects of my job, leading a team, the team members that I was leading, that camaraderie and collaboration, there were things that I just wasn't enjoying anymore in the midst of this global pandemic. And I was hitting that point of burnout and exhaustion,
Along with your
um,
family.
along with my family. And so just these real, raw, honest conversations. Now, one little caveat, this is a second marriage for me. And so this was new territory to actually trust and be vulnerable and think that I could count on somebody financially when I never had. And so when I tell you I was opening Pandora's box, it was like, wow, like I'm really turning over some really big raw stuff here. And so my husband was in full agreement. I'm all in. Let's have you resign and at least take the next year and a half off to be with Bryce. And we'll see what happens. And so that was the plan. That was the plan. And that is what I did. And the Bryce story is a miracle. He did a full turnaround, 4.0 his senior year, academic awards. And
With the help of mom.
right. Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah.
to mom and that's a good story.
It was a great story. But what I was able to do was I hired a coach of my own and I was able to just start to explore, who is it I want to be in this next chapter of my life? I was pretty sure that the corporate chapter was over. I wanted time freedom. I wanted some financial freedom, but I also wanted the ability to make an impact. I had this experience through many different aspects of what I'd been through from a divorce, raising little boys, having to have a full-time nanny to juggle all of
I've been
life,
there. Yes, I
right?
understand that.
To being 40 and having my mom pass away very unexpectedly. That just takes you out from your knees. We
Yeah.
thought she had a backache, and 5 weeks later, we were burying her.
Mm.
And it was a rare form of cancer, and so you go through these life experiences, but here you are, and I think that the real proof is in our faith, and when we take that blind faith and we say, "I don't know how this is gonna work out," which is so difficult for a type A personality, right? Somebody who has always been successful, always had a plan, always been on the fast track, and say, "I am going to trust that this is the right thing to do, and it will work out." Some way, somehow, can actually work out better than we even imagined.
And you're proof
So
of that. You also made the right choice in who you married. That's
yeah, he's pretty incredible.
it did
Yeah,
work out for you.
it did. All of that is what prompted me to get my certification and to start coaching women. And I just had a natural affinity for it. I love it. I have this superpower of clarity where I can sit down with you and you're going to tell me this whole big story and it's going to be enmeshed with he said and she said and you can't believe it and they did and I'll help you just get right to the head of the nail.
Yeah,
And
that's a really
and
great superpower. I'm sure your friends appreciate it too.
they do. Sometimes they think I'm a little too direct, so I try to soften it.
And I know that you use these same superpowers even before you made this move to coaching and to helping others with impact. You were making an impact even within the companies you were working at. I know that you were involved with starting mentorship programs. If someone's listening who is in a corporate culture, what advice could you give them on how to maybe set that up or what to look for if there's one in their organization?
Oh, I love mentoring. So I just think that there is always a desire, even if it is not spoken. People want to be mentored. They're looking for connection always, especially in a world today where we're not necessarily in an office. There's no opportunity for cooler talk or those 5 to 10 minutes after a meeting ends. People end up being very isolated in their homes, and it's those conversations where, especially our younger colleagues, that's where they learn. That's where they overhear something or they see an interaction. Or if you're out in the field, depending on what your industry is, but if you're out in the field or you're visiting with a client, that's where young people and more seasoned associates are like, that's where you learn. That's where you see what's happening, where the rubber hits the road. And so mentoring takes on many different shapes. When I arrived at Campbell's, there was a very big desire for a formal mentoring program. And I had been involved in a networking association for many, many years. And I helped with the mentoring at that association. It's called Next Up, which is a wonderful women's group. And so I said, hey, I'm doing this over there. Why don't we bring it here? And we thought maybe 100 people would sign up, and 250 people
Wow.
signed.
And it just goes to show you that they still want it, even though it may
Yes.
have not been offered at that time. As soon as it was offered, there they
Yeah.
were and standing in line and ready.
Yes. And the more simple you make it, the better. We made them into groups as opposed to one on one. One on one can get a little bit tricky because you can have personalities and those sorts of things. Little groups allowed us to pull people from all different functions in the organization, create a pod, so to speak. And those pods would meet monthly. And we had done it for about a year and a half leading up into the pandemic. And then when the pandemic hit, each of these pods knew each other and they knew each other across the organization. And so somebody in sales could call somebody in manufacturing and say, hey, I'm really having a problem. Do you know who I can call? And so it just was so helpful from a business perspective, from a personnel perspective, from a development perspective, and people felt connected.
And also, it's nice when you can connect with people. It's also nicer when you can connect with the right people for the right problem and know who to go to and have that resource because you feel more effective. Not only do you like the person who you're working with, but you feel really effective and able to do your job. So
That
I'm sure that was a great benefit.
That is such an unlock for any organization, for people to feel empowered that they know where to go and who to go to, and that it's only gonna be 1 or 2 phone calls to get the answer that they need. It's tremendous.
So you've taken this mentorship approach, and as you working with clients, and you seem to spread it everywhere, but you have to share your mentor moment with us because you've got a very special one.
I do. So I had this wonderful female SVP who said to me personally, I'm sure she said it to so many others because it was her living mantra, but she said, always arrive 15 minutes early, wherever you go, 15 minutes early. And that was not how I lived. I was chasing, running, like, okay, if I get there on the hour, I am good because I am not late, right? So 15 minutes early, this is like all new thinking for me. Okay, I respect her and I trust her. And I am now using this as my new approach to life, 15 minutes early. So fast forward maybe 6 months, and we're doing a large event in Atlanta. And the keynote speaker is the CEO of Home Shopping Network. And her name is Mindy Grossman. And she was the CEO then, and she went on to be the CEO of Weight Watchers. And I had seen Mindy a couple of other times from a distance because we were working on this large project with them. And so I got there 15 minutes early. And Mindy was there, and we were the only two there. And this mentor of mine had said to me, you never know who you're going to meet in that 15 minutes. Most executives arrive early because they want to be prepared. They want to know what their speaking part is. They want to know if there's any technical issues. So they will always arrive early. Hence, Mindy was there early. And I had an opportunity to speak with her. And she asked me, she said, is there anything that you're specifically looking for in what I'm about to deliver today in my talk? It's such a great question. And so I said, if you could just speak to the women in the audience about how you got to where you're at, and a little bit about what it's like. And she just said, absolutely. And so she was able to weave that in about how she wasn't always the CEO. She got her start one day and made her way, made her mark, and left just such an incredible impression. I then went on to leave Coca-Cola, and I had a period of time where I was doing some freelance marketing, and I put a brand on Home Shopping Network. And while we were in the green room, I was there with the CEO who was gonna go on air. Mindy Grossman came by and she said, "Lori, I heard you were here."
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And that's such a great
So
story. So
she remembered you making a great impression. And also, I love that you shared with her what would be of interest to hear because as a speaker, as you don't always know what people could
yeah,
need at that moment and in that time. And so I think you probably made her life really easy that day to share. What do you think surprised you most about meeting Mindy? Or, maybe if not Mindy, just these folks, these executives in meetings that you maybe wouldn't have expected them to be a certain way.
they've got kids they're juggling. They put on their pants the same way. She had butterflies. She said, "I gotta tell you, I'm a little nervous." Like, this is the Coca-Cola company, and it was a pretty big auditorium, and, she's just like you and me, friends with her. We could go out to dinner and eat and have a glass of wine with her.
If you can remember that they are just people like you, whoever it is, it really brings a grounding to any interaction because it doesn't place one person in a different power or position, in my opinion. It really brings you to the table as equals in whatever way that looks like, even if it's just two humans, two wonderful people open to engagement. It just calms you as well if there are butterflies.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
So let's talk about joy because we can't go anywhere without understanding it a little bit deeper. Lori, you have a wonderful story. I'm excited every time I think of your journey from being in this environment, just heads down, going fast paced, and you now wanting to make an impact. But when you say the words joy, a lot of people think of happiness. And we don't really talk about joy. And that's why I love this topic. I've taken like the happiness course, I've read all these books on happiness, but joy is a word that I don't often use. And after meeting you, I think I will be using it a lot more often. So help us understand the difference between the two.
Happiness is a feeling, certainly, and it comes from a man and it's fleeting. I'm really happy because I went to a fun party and I saw people and there was happiness in that. But joy is much deeper and it's an essence. And joy comes from within you and it's only something that you can provide you.
It's an
It's within.
emotion within.
It's internal and it comes with this freedom that says, I'm okay just the way I am. I may have been through some storms. I may have been through some seasons, but I have come to this place and I am so okay with me. And when we're okay with who we are, we can live in a moment, whether there's a storm brewing or there's bright sunny clouds outside and find joy, find real deep joy just in being. Like it doesn't have to be a party. It doesn't have to be a parade. There doesn't have to be 20 people around.
And do you have
It
to
can
be happy in that moment to
not
have the joy?
necessarily, not
Mhm.
necessarily. You can be sitting quiet. You can be still and say, oh, the joy of this day.
How do you suggest those of us listening start to incorporate the feeling of joy and recognizing it even within our day and within our life?
Joy can be directly linked to gratitude. I think that a gratitude practice helps tremendously because let's be honest, if we're walking around and we're talking about everything that stinks in our life, well, it's hard to find any joy. So this to start with, finding the gratitude and the things that really are wonderful in our life. And that can be a practice because it's a lot easier to complain and it's a lot easier to moan than it is to say, oh, but look at all the things I have to be grateful for. And when I first started my gratitude practice, there were days when I just had to be grateful that my eyes worked and my legs worked. And, I
It's
have
hard sometimes. Several years ago for Christmas, I around about the December I saw a couple of girlfriends. Both times I left with a gratitude journal. Two different women gave me like a gift of a gratitude journal. And I remember thinking, do I seem ungrateful? That was really the first thought. But took the journal and I started using mine. And I'll tell you, it was very difficult for me to actually get into that habit of every night before I went to sleep recording something. And like you, sometimes it was like, I'm grateful for my health today. Sometimes I just couldn't find anything that really excited me or made me have that joy feeling in the moment. And so I think I was approaching it all wrong. And so how I changed it was I learned from a group of folks. This one gentleman, he sets a daily gratitude alarm on his cell phone. And so the whole group of friends started doing the same thing. I heard about it and I thought, oh, I love that. Like at a moment in time, I can reflect on something that day. It just took a totally different approach for me. So every day at 6 p.m., my alarm goes off on my phone. And it's everyone who knows me knows it's my gratitude alarm going off. And if I'm with someone at the time, I'll share with them what my gratitude is. My brain is now trained to stop and think about one quick thing, or sometimes I dwell on it, but it's become a different practice for me than my journal. So anyone who's listening, if you're struggling with it like I was, try the gratitude alarm.
So I love that because the last thing we need is another task, right? And it's
Oh my
like,
I was exhausted at
oh my
night.
God, right? Like we don't want that. So to be inspired by a gratitude is exactly what you want. I try to make them colorful. For example, my youngest son has these rosy red cheeks. When I talk about him, about the way Bryce's cheeks are full of color when he smiles, and how that just makes my heart so full of love for him. He's away at college now. So, and the same, like my
You're
husband has,
remembering it as you see
yeah,
him. Mhm.
right. And I just like you can see the joy that brings to my face just thinking about this son of mine. So, yeah, gratitude helps because I'm telling you, if we get into that place of spiral and negativity, well, then I could give you 40 things that just kind of suck. And, and we
That's
could
an
be,
easy list when things aren't
we,
going well.
we could be here all day long and, and really get into that kind of negativity. But that's not going to bring us joy. And that's not the intimacy that we really want as friends.
I agree. I totally agree with that. And before we leave, I want to ask, how is it that you are helping women today? Because when we started the conversation, we talked about impact and when someone is stuck, when someone feels like the season is lasting too long. What advice can you give those of us listening out there on when you are in that moment? And how can we find you and get help from the source, Lori?
Yeah, I don't think that we're ever meant to do it alone. I've always been one to raise my hand and say, "Hey, I am not an expert in this, whether it's a website or it's copywriting or it's, coach or therapy. I need help." And I don't want to stay stuck longer than I need to because I know with that just comes the misery and the prolonged agony. And everything has a ripple effect. It's like dropping a rock into the water. So if it's misery and exhaustion and burnout, well, that's the ripple effect. But if it's joy and love and gratitude, well, that's the ripple effect too. And so I built this business with a mission to help women who really want to find more joy in their life, whether it's in their business, their professional life, or their personal life. And you can find me on my website, lauriepine.com. I have a freebie that you can download, your 5 self-care habits that they never taught you in the boardroom. I think they're clever. I think you'll enjoy them. So please download that if that interests you. And I'm at Instagram, so at Lori Pine. And I do one-on-one coaching. I customize packages for women based on what they need. I'll offer Saturday morning appointments and early morning appointments because I know women are really busy. And I know that the last thing they think that they can afford is time with a coach, but it's probably the thing that they most need and could really break them open and make all the change. That's been my experience.
I love that. We know where to find you. Hey, Lori, do you miss the corporate world?
There are days when I miss the people, that's for sure. I'm really having so much fun over here, spreading some joy.
You look like you're having a lot of fun and keep having fun, keep spreading joy and your love for mentorship. And we really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I hope you'll walk away feeling inspired and are thinking of how a mentor moment can help you or someone you know. In case you haven't hit the follow button to subscribe to this show, please do so. And if you love the episode, I'd really appreciate a review. You see, this review helps Apple or Spotify or whatever platform you're listening to us on know that other women just like you want to learn about the show, and it'll help us spread the word. Let's connect on Instagram at Working Women Mentor or at Rani Alfers. You can find all episodes online at ranialfers.com/podcast and the ability to send an audiogram of your favorite mentor moments. And we respond to everyone. I truly can't wait to hear from you. Check back weekly for new episodes, and cheers until the next episode.